Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome in if you're new. So today we're going to work on this unicorn illustration, and I went ahead and asked some of my Instagram followers if they had any questions about my art or business or anything, and they all happened to ask very on theme business type questions. So we're going to be talking like art business and being a professional artist. You're new here, my name is Gabby. I am a freelance illustrator and graphic novelist. I am currently working on my debut graphic novel, which is set to publish in spring of 2026. And I also run an online store and sell my art at different events. So today we are actually working on a blanket design. I am so excited about this. I'm working with a company called Fiber Art. I am not, for transparency, I'm not sponsored by them, but they did offer to send me a free sample of the blanket that I ended up designing. And basically, this design is going to get turned into a woven blanket. So I'm super duper excited about this. If you're interested in the specs, I am currently working in Procreate. I'm on a very small canvas size. I think it's like 700 pixels by 1,000 pixels because every pixel is essentially equal to one warp or weft in the woven final product. So it's important to work on a very small pixel size. And I'm also using a brush that has specific settings so that it's not trying to blur everything out. I think it's similar to like a pencil tool in Photoshop. It's kind of nerve-wracking to work on something without knowing exactly what the final product is going to look like, but I love the way it came out. So be sure to stick around to the end because I do a big reveal of my sample. But anyways, that's all my little intro stuff. So let's get into it with my first question. When did you start doing art professionally? By Candlelight Draws. Thank you for your question. It's kind of a weird answer. I don't know if I'm good at defining professionally, but my art experience basically, I went to art school from 2016 to 2020, and I got my first professional art gig in spring of 2020. I was making little animated illustrations for a medical research group at my university. It wasn't super excited, but it paid really well, and it was nice to learn how to work with a team like that. It was supposed to be in an office, like coming in every day, but it was the spring of 2020, so it ended up being mostly virtual. After that, I did some small private commission projects, but it was nothing really professional, I would say, just sort of making D&D characters and things for people. It was very casual. I really only started to make a living on my art last year in 2023. So I would say I've done some professional projects, like bits and pieces over the past few years, but this past year when I sold my graphic novel was definitely when I started being more full-time, I guess. And then my next question is, how do you get your foot in the door of doing art as a living? My first piece of advice for you would be to make sure that you know what art exactly you want to do for a living, because then you're going to have an easier time sort of making a game plan. Make sure you've done the research on what type of art you want to do for a living, because there's tons of options. You could work in a studio, you could do animation, you could work in publishing, you could work in editorial spaces, you could work in surface design, on concept art, etc., etc. There are lots of specific career paths under being an artist, and the more that you can research what you specifically want and target your portfolio towards that, the better your chances are going to be. I would also consider the difference between working freelance and working in a more studio salaried job. I've never worked in a studio, so I really can't share much advice about that. But MewTripled has a lot of really good videos on YouTube talking about her experiences working in animation studios. I would definitely recommend those if you're interested in that kind of studio stuff. But I can basically really only answer for what I do. So I'm a freelance illustrator, and my current income streams are working in publishing, which would be, my graphic novel, online store sales, and selling at events. I used to offer commissions, but I don't really do them anymore because I don't have the time. For how I got my foot in the door with publishing, I would say I sent tons and tons of cold emails. I spent months creating a portfolio for what I wanted to do specifically, and I had multiple spreadsheets of agents and editors I had wanted to contact. I definitely talk more about this in depth in my How I Sold My Graphic Novel video, which is up on my channel. So if you're interested in hearing like the selling of a graphic novel process, that would be probably a good one to check out. If you are doing this cold email strategy, I would recommend applying to only a few places at a time, and then taking a couple weeks to work on your portfolio and just constantly be trying to address the weak points in it. And then if you hear back any critiques or any acceptances, which would be lovely, you can sort of take their thoughts and apply it to your portfolio. And then after those few weeks, apply to a few more places, whether that's agents or editors, because this is going to keep all of your applications staggered. You don't want to just make a spreadsheet of 60 publishers to apply to and then apply to all of them at once, because a lot of these places ask that you don't apply too often. It's usually like 6 months to a year where it's appropriate to apply again or send your portfolio. And if you keep everything staggered, you can sort of work cyclically on this. If you're looking for more information on how to do this type of cold contacting, Anoosha Syed has tons of great videos about this. I'll definitely link her in my description. Another great plus to that sort of cyclical application cycle is that you are always learning and adjusting your portfolio and researching. So every time you apply, it's going to be better than the time you applied before, whether that's working on your letter or your portfolio. I would also recommend that you make sure you have the projects you want to be hired for in your portfolio. So basically what that means is if you're trying to get hired for picture book work, but there's no picture book samples in your portfolio, whoever's looking at it might not be confident that you can do it. You might be a great illustrator, but it's different to be a great picture book illustrator. Do you know what I mean? Or a great graphic novelist. And you don't have to wait for somebody to hire you to make a picture book to make a picture book. Does that make sense? I was constantly assigning myself projects that showed the kind of work that I wanted to be doing. So I didn't have picture book samples in my portfolio. So I made a little picture book spread. I didn't have graphic novel samples. So I started making little comics to throw in my portfolio. I didn't have magazine type work in my portfolio. So I started making little projects that would look great in a magazine. So doing stuff like that definitely makes the people looking at your portfolio more confident that you would be able to do the type of work that they're looking for. Now, my advice for getting your foot in the door for selling art, I would definitely recommend starting small if you're trying to start a store with prints and stickers. They generally have a really low overhead investment price, so it's not a huge investment of money on your end while you're starting out. I really only started branching out this year when I started going to in-person events. So this past year, I went to Mocha Fest. Mocha Fest is the only event I've been to so far this year, but I'm also going to SPX and CXC, which is in Columbus. Well, SPX is in DC and CXC is going to be in Columbus. I absolutely love going to these events and meeting people and expanding my art community. It's a really great way to learn from what other people are doing, but you don't have to start crazy. I would also tell you that depending on the art you make, research what different events will fit you best. So I really only started selling in person last year, and I told myself that was my year of trying things out. So I attended zine fests, art markets, comic and cartoon cons, festivals. It took me a little bit of trial and error to figure out where my art sells best. I had some of those events where it blew my expectations out of the water, and I had some of those events where I didn't even make the table price back. So this year, I definitely have a better understanding of where I think my art sells. I love going to zine and comic festivals, but I do not do very well at like art and craft spaces. If you're interested, I would love to do like a more full-scale video on how I run my store. It's kind of fun because we're making a product for my store right now on the time lapse and talking about how I run my store. But I would love to talk more about it if you were interested in that. Let me know. And my last tip with, getting your foot in the door as an artist, a freelance artist specifically, be comfortable that freelance takes a while to get your footing. Full disclosure, but 2023 was the first year that I actually made a profit on my art. I always say it's like a snowball. It starts super small but the more you push and push and push, it builds up and you don't even really notice it. I spent a lot of time working part-time jobs to pay my bills and taking any free time I had to try and cold email and work on my store and build my social media account. And I hate when people say, oh, there's no money in art, because I firmly believe that there is money to be made in art, but I do think it's really complicated to get in on the entry level. But also, maybe this is my personal thing, but what job isn't like that these days? Any kind of profession nowadays is really hard to get in on the ground level. So this sort of goes into my next question, but there's no shame in needing a job to pay your bills. You are a real artist, no matter what the finances are. I would encourage you not to let capitalism define your artistic success. You are an artist. If you make art, you're an artist. It doesn't matter what the money is. I would try as much to separate the value of your art from your success as a business person. It'll just make you a lot happier in the long run. And I've definitely struggled a lot with that. But yeah, so that kind of last thought blends into my next question I got. How do you stay motivated to do your art, even with a 9 to 5? So like I said earlier, I've had tons of not art jobs. I've worked multiple retail gigs. I worked for a certain unnamed coffee chain. I worked at a thrift store. I worked at an embroidering and screen printing shop. I've worked on a farm. I worked at an art gallery. There's probably a few others I'm forgetting, but I've basically had a job since I was like 15. But for clarity, I've never had an office job per se. A lot of these jobs I was working full time or I had multiple jobs at once, but I've never had like a 9 to 5 salaried job where I sat down at an office. And I know that's different. This might be chaotic advice, and I would definitely tell you to consider it within your own means. But I would just encourage you to keep your long-term art goals in the grand scheme of your life. So every job I worked that wasn't art related, I put the minimum amount of effort in. Not that I was purposefully doing a bad job. I was a good employee. I had enough money to pay my bills, but I wasn't putting in anything extra. I wasn't trying to get promoted in any of these positions because they just weren't my focus. I clocked in to make sure that I still had food and I was able to still pay my bills. I also just generally think that right now the work world overworks and undervalues employees that work the jobs that I used to work. So I was always just kind of matching that energy. I guess you could call me, what do they say? Like the quiet quitters. I'm a quiet quitter, I guess, because I never wanted to put that energy into working at a coffee shop. Why would I put the majority of my energy there when I could put the majority of my energy into what I did when I clocked out, which was trying to invest in my own business and in my own career that I really, really wanted. But I get it. It is super, super hard to motivate yourself to make art even when you're working. And I've definitely had periods of time where I was just in survival mode, working, clocking in and out, and not making any art. I wish I had better advice because it is just an extremely exhausting experience. And pretty much what I did was just, again, try to like put as little effort into my day job as I could. And that way I could save as much of my like spoons for when I clocked out and I was cold emailing or working on social media or anything like that. I could also maybe recommend looking into groups of people who are going through the same thing as you. I know as an artist who works at this full time now, my advice might not be super relatable because it is insanely hard and I don't want to try to talk on something that I'm not currently experiencing. But I know Kelsey Rodriguez has a really amazing artist discourse, and I know that they have some channels that are dedicated to artists, supporting artists while working 9 to 5 jobs. So that could be a really good community for you to look into and maybe join. I will post Kelsey Rodriguez's information in the Discord. She's another great YouTuber that I would recommend if you're interested in like art business or anything. Okay, so now I think we are on to my last question, which is tips for artists fighting the new 2024 Instagram algorithm. I'm a freelance artist new to Instagram, Adrian Doyle Art. Thank you for your question. I wish I had better answers for this, but the hard truth of it is I have never been good at Instagram. I have had my Instagram account for 10 years, and I've only had 1K at the beginning of 2023. And this is just fully blunt on how I did that. I had one Instagram reel go viral that got, I think, 1.7 million views. And that really does account for most of my followers. And I have been steadily losing followers for like 2 months now because that video was just a very narrow look at what I do. And I think those people, and this is not, I'm not trying to complain about people unfollowing me. I don't want people who aren't interested to feel like they have to stick around. That's totally fine. But I think that that video gave a very narrow view of what I do. I'll put it up. It's just me flipping through my sketchbook. It's very strange. I think it went viral because it was my art and then also the caption that I used, or like I think I wrote no one's born an artist or something. And I think people really had differing opinions on that. So they went into the comments section and sort of debated whether they agreed with that statement or whether they didn't, which comments and like people interacting with each other in a video is something that really shoots it up in the algorithm. But anyways, yeah, I got most of my followers from that video, and now I've been steadily losing followers. I think I lose like 100 a month, which is okay. I'm totally, I don't know. I've tried very hard lately to just like let go of the follower numbers and just make things that I love to make, especially since my strategy last year was to post reels and use the Instagram option that says post just to the reels feed, because those videos I was posting just to reels were basically an introduction to my art to try to interest new people. And then all of my main feed posts were things that I wanted to share with people who were already familiar with what I did. But Instagram, for some reason, took away the post just to reels option, which kind of ruined my strategy. So I feel like I am pretty lost with this 2024 algorithm as well. But I can give you some general social media advice. My biggest tip would be, as much as figuring out how to work with an algorithm can help your content get seen, you need to make sure that you're making high quality content. And what I mean by that is you could hypothetically make a video that is perfect for the algorithm. You know, you're doing all the right things with all the right hashtags and you have all the quick edits or, you know, whatever is trendy. But the video that is the best for the algorithm might not be the best representation of you. So, for example, that video that went viral, it is sketchbook related, which is great. I love working in my sketchbook. But now I've noticed that that is what my followers expect from me, which I love, but I don't work in my sketchbook that fast. So I can't keep up that amount of content. So I have to share other things. And then I'm sharing things that my followers might not necessarily be interested in. So I would just encourage you to try to always make sure that you're doing you. And you might find yourself pushed into weird little niches in the algorithm, which you can use or ignore to your heart's content. And basically, you can control your art, but you can't control the algorithm. So I'd always recommend on focusing your attention on making art that makes you happy and that you're excited to share. And I would say that applies to all social medias, especially with how fast algorithms change, because you could take the time to figure it out and then potentially that strategy isn't a thing anymore in the next couple months, you know? But just, I don't really have like a consistent posting schedule. I try to post once a week at least, but really I'm just trying to make things that I am internally excited about and authentically want to share with people, because I think at the end of the day, it's so hard to break through the noise. And I think it's really appealing for people to see somebody who's just doing something that they wholeheartedly love. So, my best of luck to you. I know you can do it. And I think that is going to be it. Please let me know in the comments if you have any other questions. I really like making these Q&A videos, or if you're interested, I'd love to make bigger videos on specific topics that you're interested in. So I would love to hear from you or just chat with you in the comments. But yeah, I think we're going to skip over to that reveal. I really love the way this came out, and I was definitely scared to see how the colors came out. But yeah, let's do that. Okay, hi. Let's flash forward a few weeks from when I made that drawing, because I have the blanket in my hands right now. Are you ready? Trying to do like a cute reveal. This blanket's huge, so it might be hard for me to get the whole thing, but uh, uh, me standing on my couch trying to get the whole thing in frame. Yeah, I am super pleased with the way this came out. This is definitely the biggest project I've made that I've seen on this biggest scale, and it is super light. It is a perfect like summer blanket. I'm one of those people who wants a blanket all year round, even if it's not even cold. I don't want the monsters to get me if my legs are uncovered. And it's huge. My husband and I sit comfortably under this blanket on our couch. And if you are interested, there's no pressure at all, but this is now available for sale on my website. So if you like the blanket and you want to support me, that is always appreciated. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this. I had a really good time filming it and answering your questions. So I will catch up with you guys in the next video. I'll see ya. That was so corny.